I left Christianity and fundamentalist churches, I read a statistic online that said that approximately 200 million people had died due to Christianity. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that every Christian somewhere has killed somebody. Of course not. Any more than every adult who believes in democracy has harmed somebody. But you can't deny that, yeah, there's a lot of nice religious people out there. Friendly, law-abiding, family-oriented, with tons of compassion and affection to people, even for people they don't know and are very different from themselves. What I will say, there seems to be a consistency when it comes to the far-right, conservative, family values kind of people. The Christians, the MAGA, people like that. And I'm not saying that every MAGA is a religious person, okay? Of course not. That would be ridiculous. MAGAs are different kinds of people that believe in one thing. They don't like democracy. That's what it is. Some of them actually believe that becoming fascist is something that all Christians and religious people should strive to be. I'd rather have a nightmare than be in that reality. But it is true. People who have identified as Christian, Catholic, or some form of Protestant leaning has committed murder. They may call it colonialism, birthright, or manifest destiny, the Trail of Tears, the 30 Years' War, the 100 Years' War, the Crusades, the French Revolution. They might call it a lot of things. But at the end of the day, it's all about religion. And if it's not solely about religion, it's about how religion is used to control the layman, also known as the working class, whether they're educated or not, in quality, academics, who knows. Back during the time the Catholic Church was in charge, which was anywhere from 8500 to 1800, you couldn't even have a license to sell, distribute, or produce anything in Europe or anywhere where Catholicism was in charge without being a member of the Catholic Church. It's very interesting how back when I was a Calvinist, I thought the end times was the world was going to end, and it was going to be because of the religious wars and the religious climate of the day. Calvinists believe that the mark of the beast in Revelations kind of stands for the Catholic Church, where you can't buy anything, you can't sell anything, you really can't do anything of political or authority without having the mark of the Pope. Luckily now, most places don't require you to be a Catholic, and no Catholics can become King or Queen of England. That was during the 1600s. They put that in there. I think it's the succession law. People still discriminate against each other because of religious leanings. There are certain parts of the world where women cannot inherit property or titles or even crowns because they're a female or if they're a Catholic. It's very interesting. I am never surprised by what happens when it comes down to Christianity. There are states in America that have laws on the book that say that in order to be a volunteer at an election, you have to take an oath. There's something about America having to take oaths for everything. When I was in LA, I met a lot of people from different, like every country on the globe, even countries that aren't recognized by the UN. Places like Palestine. Even though now, since I've met these people, the UN has started to recognize it, but at that time they hadn't. And there are people from all places on the globe that practice different beliefs. And when they say that America has a kink when it comes to oaths and pledges, I'm not kidding. In other countries around the globe, most countries don't do tips. They don't do pledges of allegiance. They don't salute to the flag. They just don't do those things. It's weird, but it's something America does. And a lot of these salutes, pledges, and allegiances that we do has only been since the 1950s, back when we were God-fearing, commie-hating homophobics. I'm not kidding. The 1950s was one of the most homophobic decades of the last 200 years. And every country looks at us like we're weird because we have to pledge everything. And it's even more weird that we do it. And there's only one reason why we do it. It's a religious thing. There are states, a few of them tried to make it legal to require an oath to be taken. And it turned out it was a religious thing. And some Supreme Court, I'm not sure if it was the state or the federal Supreme Court, said it was illegal. It is, because if you actually read the first documents of our country, you can have no oath nor test to determine if somebody can be a volunteer or work in politics. They put that in there because they knew that there were bigots under the disguise of religion and politics that would refuse to allow atheists or any group besides white and Protestant to hold any positions of power. I actually looked up how many politicians or people in positions of authority are atheists. Very few to none. Because people don't want to vote for an atheist because they actually believe that atheists are godless, murderous, child-killing people. I laugh when I say that because it's funny. 2 out of 3 inmates in prison identify as Christian or some form of Western religion. Less than 1%, okay, less than 1 out of 100 people in prison identify as agnostic or atheist. Who do they think is going to commit crime? 67% are people who fear God and call themselves Bible-believing people. In my opinion, you're more likely to have anything happen to you standing next to someone who believes in God than someone standing next to you believing there is no God. The worst people I have ever come in contact with believed in Christianity. I've met less than 5 Christians in my entire life, and I've lived and traveled to every state, country, and territory in North America. I have driven across the U.S. 11 times. I have yet to find more than 5 Christians that have ever been cordial or friendly to me. The second they find out I'm an atheist, they act like I have leprosy. And it's not a joke about people who have leprosy. I'm saying people look at you like you have a second head. It's really true. People fear atheists because they think that atheists are bad. If you actually compare, based on approximate assumptions, what group It's like, how many more people have Christians killed than atheists? I think it's a 10-to-1 scenario. I honestly believe that politicians, leaders, and people who identify as Catholic, Protestant, or Christian would be a 10. And the amount of people that have died due to atheism, a 1. Yeah, a lot of the authoritarian world-dominating, commie-loving people who ruled those kind of countries identified as something similar to atheism. But real atheists, they don't kill people, because atheists have morals. In my opinion, atheists will always be more consistently moral than anything that religious people can offer. Why? Why are atheists more moral, decent, and compassionate people? Because no one's putting a gun next to our head saying, if you don't do this or don't do that, you go to hell. You're more likely to want to help people if there's no consequence for not doing it. It's true. It really is. And you put all the casualties having to do with wars, famines, every time the Catholic and Protestant Church merged, changed, morphed, or progressed, you have hundreds of thousands of deaths. It's really true. Plagues, slavery, it was all started due to the belief that God wanted people to conquer the land, visit, control, and name places after God. And if not after God, after a very Catholic king. You look at places like Virginia, and a lot of the names of places, Philadelphia and New Jersey, they're all named after specific people or Catholic identities. And I lived in Los Angeles. It's actually named after angels. I mean, it's funny, but it's true. Most of the pestilence, wars, and economic and social and gender changes, usually bad, were because of religious progression. Our country was founded, and the first people who identified as white were European, Protestant, Puritan extremists. These were the people that did the Salem witch trials, and, they didn't like anyone that was different. If you've ever read The Scarlet Letter, you know what I mean. Religion brings a whole new layer to what a tyrant is. And there's a reason why fascists always use religion to justify their bigotry and just their general dislike for, heaven help us if somebody's different. And even today, there are a lot of places in the world that target groups of people that just want to worship, or the lack thereof, live their life the way they want to without hurting a single person. And even in America, there are certain places I would not recommend for certain groups to go to. That's why I left Florida. Certain parts of the U.S., there's something in the air and the water, because they're just weird, and not weird because of how they act or how they live. There's just religious extremism there. That's why they call it the Bible Belt. And I just don't go through those places anymore. It's MAGA central. And yeah, there's a lot of loving, nice Democrats that live in Texas and Florida. But there's a reason why they build certain containment places there. There's a reason why they built alligator Alcatraz in Florida. because very few Floridians are going to say there's something wrong. If you built that in California, you'd probably get hurt. But in Florida, they'd probably put up a sign that says this is what we're known for. There's just something about places that are very red that it all comes down to why there's a lot of homelessness, poverty, STIs, just general breakdown in society. The more conservative, the more religious you are, whatever category and location you are, you're going to encounter the worst parts of human nature in extremely red areas. And yeah, there's a lot of violence in blue California, but I felt safer in California than I did in Florida. Yeah, Florida's the state that instead of welcoming everybody as they are, they decide it's somewhat okay to remove a rainbow crosswalk outside of a mass shooting memorial because they think it's a political statement. And yet they don't think that building a what do they call those places? Undocumented immigrant holding facilities as not a political statement. There's a reason why Florida doesn't like black people. It's because wherever you are, any location or area that is extremely red, Republican, and conservative, you won't find the best education there, and you won't find people who don't lean closer toward racism. There's a reason why Florida is a cesspool. And I've lived there. I've visited every major city and area in Florida. I would not recommend that anyone who isn't heterosexual, white, and conservative, be careful where you go. Because, like Wyoming, they don't like gay people. And I've heard of a lot of people get spit on for being black or gay. So no, I would not recommend going outside major cities in Florida. But there's a reason why the most violent cities in America are red. Because where there's religion and traditional conservative values, you're going to find the highest rates of mass violence, terrorism, and acts of depravity. And these days, a lot of them are going to prison for getting a little too close to kids. And I grew up in religious extremism. I have never seen a more immature, sexually repressed, neurologically undeveloped group of people as fundamentalist Christians. And they are the kind of people that cheer on abortion bans that kills a lot of people, much more people than if they allowed abortion to happen. The cities with the highest murder stats are Republican cities. And religiously backed president like Trump, he sends the National Guards to cities that have black mayors. If that doesn't tell you a lot of what conservative culture is like, do a simple Google search. But it's true. I honestly believe Christianity, Catholic or Protestant, has killed more than 200 million people. I think 200 million is very low. I think it's more like several million. And it never changes. But at least some of the denominations now don't believe in the polar opposite, very undesiring of inclusivity. So we are moving toward a better world. But as long as we have conservative politics and religion, it's going to be a fight every single day.